Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast, where we talk with the people behind the current events and breakthroughs in brain implants in an understandable way, helping bring together various fields involved in neuroprosthetics. Here is your host, Ladan Jiracek.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Christian Iorio-Morin from University of Sherbrooke in Canada. Or is it said in a French way? Sorry, I should have asked.
Sherbrooke is fine. It's an English word anyways.
Okay. So you're a neurosurgeon restoring movement and autonomy after paralysis. You had a publicist reach out to talk about gamma knife, which we will talk about. I think that's an interesting thing that we haven't talked about. You also do neuromodulation and basically looking to restore function in Parkinson's and essential tremor. So this is something that we do here at the University of Florida. So I know a little bit about this. But anyways, Dr. Iorio-Morin, welcome to the show. Do you want to introduce yourself better than I just did?
No, I think you did a good job. I'm just your typical functional neurosurgeon. So I treat movement disorders, I treat pain, I do a lot of trigeminal neuralgia, both open microvascular decompressions and more funky stuff, including neuromodulation and gamma knife. And then on the side of that, so I do 50% of my practice is these proven clinical indications, and then the other 50% is research. And this is where we can have a lot of fun with new or upcoming indications, such as paralysis or some sort of pain syndromes that are more difficult to treat.
Okay. So your practice is a personal practice, or are you through the university or some kind of hospital? How does that work?
Yeah, Canada is a bit different than in the US. So people are typically, neurosurgeons at least, are always affiliated with the hospital. It's a public healthcare system where the neurosurgeons are in the hospitals, and then we treat the patients there. There's not really a lot of private work being done in Canada. It all goes through the hospital, and sometimes there are like some smaller clinics that don't have all the hospital beds, but these services are typically all reimbursed by the government. I'm an academic surgeon, which means that we have we treat the population, but we also have a residency training program, and we do research.
Yeah, sounds fun. You get to make the new standard of care, be on the cutting edge, literally, because you're cutting. So I guess let's fulfill this podcast purpose. Let's talk about gamma knife. I don't think we've talked about this on the show. What is it? Radiosurgery. It sounds fun. Gamma knife. That's a great name. So what is it?
The name is cool. It's actually not new. It's a very old technology that was developed by Lars Leksell, which is the guy who developed the Leksell frame that a lot of us use for the brain stimulation surgeries. And basically the idea is that you send gamma rays using multiple sources of gamma rays through the skull, and at the point of focus where all these sources meet, you get a very high dose of radiation, and you can use that to do treatments. So the most common indication would be to treat metastasis or various brain tumors, meningiomas, schwannomas. But my practice is to use that to do functional treatments. So basically the two most frequent treatments we would do is shoot the gamma rays on the trigeminal nerve in order to treat trigeminal neuralgia, or send the gamma rays to the thalamus in order to treat essential tremor. And here the idea is that we target the exact same circuit that we do using the brain stimulation, but instead of blocking it and jamming it with electricity, we burn it using the gamma rays. It's the same target that is used in ultrasounds. It's the same target that is used in radiofrequency ablation. And basically the idea, and this comes down to the limit of what neuromodulation can do right now, is we are destroying a circuit, basically. And whether it be in pain, in trigeminal neuralgia, or it be in essential tremor, or in Parkinson's even, what we're really doing with all our surgeries is we are jamming a pathological circuit. And this is why when you do deep brain stimulation for tremor, you have the exact same effect as doing a lesion in the same spot. We are used to thinking that deep brain stimulation stimulates the brain, but in reality, it's the same as giving a stroke, a highly controlled stroke in that little thing. What we're doing is we are taking diseases like Parkinson's, like tremor, like pain, where you have a pathological signal that if you can jam it or block it, you provide relief. And this is what we can do with the gamma knife or ultrasounds or radio frequency or deep brain stimulation. It's really about managing and modulating a specific circuit. And these are all tools to address the same disease.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've heard it compared to basically kicking the TV and then it works again, so you don't really know why it works, but so yeah, you're basically shutting off this circuit. And yeah, so I guess how does it compare to neuromodulation? How does this gamma knife compare to deep brain stimulators? Obviously, yours is more permanent. You're permanently destroying, ablating the tissue, and then the deep brain stimulator, you could turn it off in case you need to use this signal. If you want to start shaking or something, like maybe you're stirring some eggs or something like this, so you want to start shaking.
Yeah. I guess the big advantage is that you don't have anything implanted. It doesn't need surgery and it doesn't need after-sales support, you would call. You don't need follow-up visits to program it or keep it working. So basically, it's a much simpler treatment. You send the radiation, it creates the lesion, and then the patient does well or doesn't. And that's the thing where we like neuromodulation. When we do DBS, the best thing about DBS is you turn it on and then you see the tremor stop, and then you turn it off and you see the tremor start back again. And it really makes you believe that you're doing something useful, permanent, and that it's working. But it comes at the cost of having to put the electrodes in place, opening the skull, inserting the leads, and then programming the battery. So in Canada, as in the US, it's a very large country. You have a lot of people who don't live close to the hospital, who cannot come to the hospital every 3 months, 6 months to get their battery checked out, or who are just not interested in having implants. And in these patients, it's useful to be able to do something that is simpler. Now, with the Abbott deep brain stimulator, you can do remote programming, and that's been very useful in being able to provide access to therapy to these people who live in remote areas or are far from centers, from big centers. But at the same time, many people just don't want an implant. I've been having tremor my whole life, and I'm fine. It's too complicated. Sometimes they're just scared of the surgery. So when they are offered something that is a bit simpler, that better fulfills their need. And the big disadvantage, whether it's ultrasound, gamma knife, or radio frequency ablation, which are all methods to achieve a lesion, when it works as well as a deep brain stimulator. And so there's really, if we knew that we could always target the right circuit in the same way and achieve the perfect lesion, there would be absolutely no advantage to using a deep brain stimulator. It's just more complicated. The reason we still do DBS and the reason it's still relevant is that sometimes we don't produce the lesion that we want. Sometimes we don't see exactly the circuit. We can't target it absolutely right. Sometimes we don't know where the circuit are, especially in cases where it's not essential tremor. It's like more post-traumatic tremor or a multiple sclerosis associated tremor. And the circuit is not as well known or as well defined. And in these cases, or in tremor which has a very advanced or severe disease, in these cases, you need to jam a very big circuit. And to do that, you need to create a bigger lesion. And the bigger the lesion, the higher the risk of side effects, right? And this is the big advantage of DBS, is with DBS, if you get side effects, you just reprogram your way around them. And you can increase your current until it's not tolerated. And then when it isn't, you just go down. And you can find this sweet spot where you have the best therapeutic effect and as little side effect as possible. So this is the reason why we love DBS. But in reality, if we could produce exactly the right lesion of the right size all the time consistently, there would be no need for DBS. So in essential tremor, we can almost do that. We know where the circuit is. It's very reproducible. And this is why a lot of people are now choosing lesions. And the Gamma knife is an incredible way to do lesions. It's much simpler than the ultrasound treatments because you don't need to shave the head. You don't need to spend a couple of hours in the MRI, and it's not painful. These are our big advantage that we have when we do these treatments with Gamma knife. Now we have also disadvantage, the biggest of which is that when we do a Gamma knife treatment, there's a very weird reaction that happens where there's absolutely no response immediately after the treatment. It takes 3, 4, 5, 6 months for the lesion to appear and slowly grow and reach the size that you wanted. And then the treatment effect appears. So when you do a Gamma knife treatment, the patients go home the same day and they're the same as before they were treated. And the benefit appears over a couple of months. So there's a latency. And this is basically the biggest disadvantage of the treatment.
Wow. Yeah, fascinating stuff. And I see also you guys do a lot of people with lived experience. So you guys are talking Plex. You guys are talking to people who have this implanted, who have these indications, these issues. And yeah, if you had to say, would you rather get shot with radiation or open up your skull? That's a hard question. Yeah, maybe the radiation is the easier thing and less difficult to agree to or something like that. So is that your guys' experience? Is that more people like the Gamma knife versus deep brain stimulation?
We are about, I would say, 3/4 of the patient choose a lesion over deep brain stimulation. The people who would choose deep brain stimulation are the younger people in whom we expect the disease to evolve and in whom we might need to retreat in the future. And this is something that it is much better controlled with Gamma knife than with repeated lesions. It's much better controlled with DBS than by doing repeated lesions. But for the vast majority of people, when they are 70 years old, 75, 80, it's just they all choose lesions because it's simpler and it works as well. Now, when they have to decide between should I have ultrasound or should I have Gamma knife, they typically go for convenience. I'm using a Gamma knife in my center. I always offer both. I offer both treatments. People just choose whatever is simpler. I think Gamma knife is more comfortable. I think it's a procedure that is better tolerated than ultrasound. It's not as satisfying for the surgeon because when they come out of the machine, they still have their tremor. So you have to be more patient to see and appreciate the effect. Whereas in an ultrasound treatment, they come out of the machine and they like the tremor has stopped. But ultrasound has a lot of problems, including the pain and the requirement for doing a very long MRI. And but at the end of the day, it's the lesion that works. It's not the way you do it. It's the circuit that you target it. So the efficacy is the same. And so when you talk to people, what's funny is often they need to give you a free and informed consent, but the light of the consent will change the decision. If I tell you, you know what, I can burn your brain with the gamma rays and it's going to create a hole and you're going to be fine. Or I could put this very precise electrode exactly where I need it, and then I can skillfully program around your side. They're going to go for the DBS. If you tell them, I can crack your skull open and put a lead in, and then you're going to have a battery, and we're going to have to replace it all the time. Or I could just send this very precise gamma ray to the brain, and you'll be fine forever. It's the people will just, you can manipulate what people choose if you're not completely honest when you have that discussion. So what I usually tell everybody is it's the circuit that you are targeting that works and that provides the benefit. It has no importance how you do it. So these are the various options and they each have their advantage or disadvantage. But at the end of the day, you know, the people, it's a thalamotomy for tremor, neuromodulation for tremor. People are so happy. It's such a effective and impressive treatment. It's like magic. When you are in an OR and you ask patient to do a spiral, and you create the lesion or you start the stimulator and they can do a beautiful spiral for the first time in their life, It's the most beautiful thing in the world. Sometimes they cry and joy of being able to gain that functionality back. So it's an amazing treatment, whatever technique you use to do it.
Yeah. Interesting. And you do have experience with DBS. You've done both, right? Is that what you're saying too? Or and other types of neuromodulation? Do you have experience with that? And so you're able to tell the patient which one works better. And I guess what's your experience with other types of neuromodulation too?
Yeah, so I do DBS and I have done ultrasound during my training in Toronto. And here I do gamma knife. And as I say, they all work well. They are all good treatments. And we just go for the simplest. Now, what's nice with DBS is that it's a good method to explore new treatments and new targets where you don't necessarily know upfront what you're going to get in terms of results. So you might not want to create a lesion there until it's consistent and reliable. So let me give you an example. We have a study right now going on for trigeminal neuralgia. So trigeminal neuralgia is a excruciating facial pain syndrome. People get an electric shock in the face every time they touch their face, their teeth, they get this huge electric shock. It's horrific pain. In most cases, the trigeminal neuralgia is caused by an artery that's hitting on the trigeminal nerve. And you can do a surgery, a very cool surgery, where you open a little incision behind the ear, you open the skull, and then you get inside the head, between the skull and the cerebellum. You get to the nerve, you move the artery away, you put a Teflon patch between the nerve and the artery, and then you close. And this can cure the disease in 70% of cases. It's a beautiful surgery. It's super fun to do, and the patients just do very well. But there are cases where the trigeminal neuralgia cannot be treated using the standard procedure. And these cases include multiple sclerosis, or sometimes patients have lesions in the brainstem that intersect the trigeminal tract. As the nerve enters and goes to the various nuclei in the brain, there's a lesion there that we see. And these patients present all the symptoms of trigeminal neuralgia. So in a case like this, we can use treatments that will destroy the nerve. We can send gamma knife to the trigeminal nerve. We can take a needle, get to the nerve, and burn the nerve with radio frequency. But with neuromodulation, we can try and probe this circuit. So we have been trying a couple of things. One of them is just taking an electrode, putting it under the skin where people have pain, and activating the stimulator to send sensation and try to numb the area so that they don't feel as much pain. We have also been using DBS electrodes and putting the electrodes through the posterior fossa into the trigeminal tract to try to block the pain as it gets generated and gets into the brainstem. And these kind of exploratory studies are studies that you can do very easily and safely with neuromodulation because you're not destroying anything. So you can try to interfere with the pain under the skin. You can try to interfere with the pain in the brainstem as it gets to the nerve. You can also put electrodes on the spinal cord in the area where the spinal trigeminal nucleus is and try to catch the pain at that level and do another kind of neuromodulation. And these are all things that would be extremely difficult to do if you only could do lesions, if you only had lesioning techniques in your toolbox. So neuromodulation allows to not only treat patients, but to probe the brain circuits and figure out what happens when I send stimulation here, what happens when I send it here, and can I, through some kind of program, get a control over the pain. The other thing that's super interesting with these is that some of the devices can actually allow you to record local field potential. So the Medtronic DBS, we talked about the Abbott one earlier with remote programming. Now the Medtronic DBS can record signals. And so one thing that you can do is try to see, does my patient have a problem right now? Can I decode that my patient is in pain or is having tremor or is having dystonia or spasticity or whatever? Can I decode the fact that the patient has a problem using the stimulator and use that signal to decide when I'm going to give stimulation or if I need to give more stimulation or less? And this is called adaptive DBS, and it's a very exciting field of study that is now being more and more possible right now. Yeah.
Yeah, basically having closed loop systems, and in that way you can increase or decrease the level of circuit disruption and cell or neural destruction. So yeah, so this is very interesting. So it is interesting to have a neurosurgeon's perspective on things. And with neuromodulation, a lot of times we're talking to designers, neural engineers, and they don't necessarily put their fingers into patients' brains or anything like this. And they're designing for a concept versus designing for what actually works in the clinic. And obviously, the clinic has its own rules, and you can't adopt something without showing that it works correctly, and then you have to have evidence and everything like this. What's something that you're seeing in neural engineering, neural implants, design, and techniques or something like this that is absolutely wrong? And it would only be fixed if somebody came to talk to you and you'd be able to get them on the right path because they're going down the wrong path. What do you think?
It's a tough question. I think the biggest challenge right now is that many people have many ideas, but they are very difficult to test because we don't have access to the hardware or software to test them. So you take a very simple idea, like a closed loop DBS, where I have a hardware that can record and that can stimulate, and I would like to test a new algorithm or a new way to do that. And the biggest problem we have right now is that I cannot do that because the device is locked. It's being sold for a specific application. It's been approved by the FDA, Health Canada, European Union, whatever, for a specific indication, and you get it as is locked. If you want to unlock it to do research or to try new ideas, you need to create a partnership with the company. And this is sometimes possible. Often it's not because it's technically impossible, but because there's just so many people in the world who want to try various things that the companies need to think of their business. What's the next big thing I want to invest in? And what are the 2 or 3 people that I'm going to partner to push that agenda forward? And everything else, it's not that it's not interesting, it's just not a business priority. So if you are in a lab and you are working not on a business priority of the company who produces the hardware that you need, it's going to be impossible to do your study or to test this idea unless you just develop a completely new set of hardware yourself. But then it leads to duplication of work. I don't want to build a DBS. Like, there are enough DBS available. I just want access to the software. So I think this, and I'm not saying that I have the solution to this, but I think the biggest problem right now is that so many people have so many ideas that could move the field forward, but cannot test them or cannot accomplish them because we need hardware. This is not just a study that we can do in our living room. You need hardware that is approved to be implanted in human subjects. It needs to be solid. It needs to be robust. And so if you want to just play with the software, all the rules around that make it so difficult that it takes a lot of patience, a lot of funding, and a lot of motivation to be able to put these studies together. So I think there is a big need in the field for a kind of standardized way in which research could be done using existing commercial platforms, a kind of standard middle software that would work as a glue between all these various devices that we could use to conduct research without every company needing to open specific privileges to specific researchers. I have just like a research mode that can connect to a standard software that anyone can use, and then you don't need a special treatment from the companies to do your studies. I think that's the biggest need that I feel that would enable the field to move forward more quickly.
Yeah, that does sound good. There is something, I just sent you a message. It's a Hornet Center. It's an open NIH, like I think DBS stimulator and CARS, CARSS, and these are like open source medical devices, everything like this. So that seems good, and I think it hasn't been used as much as it should, but it does seem like it's a gatekeeping thing. And you have the companies who aren't so interested in developing new things. Honestly, they've got a good thing going. Why would they change something and disrupt a moneymaker? And then there's regulatory blockages, FDA, and I guess whatever the equivalent is in Canada, I think prevents you from just fiddling around and trying new things out. Even though you might have volunteers and people with full knowledge of the risks might be willing to try stuff out and experiment and everything like this. But yeah, it seems, do you think it is like a regulatory thing? Like, the government's getting in the way or something like this?
I don't think the government is, I don't think it's, I think it's important that the government gets in the way in some point because you don't want people being able to do completely crazy stuff on human beings. Like it's important to have safeguards. But at the same time, I think it's just a matter of every company being open to facilitating research and in an environment that does not cost them a lot to do. And that's the issue. Right now, when you want to do this, you have to have the company support, and the company has to invest resources in your project. Even if they don't give you money or hardware, they have to give you engineering time so that they open the things. So I think it would be just a matter to structure the product. So by default, they have a mode that they can be set into that people can use to do those things. And the project that you mentioned, the cars, that's an amazing thing. It's super cool. It's an open architecture for a neurostimulator. But you know what the problem is with that? I can't buy it. I cannot, it's good. I have the plans. I still cannot implant it in some human beings. It has to exist to be built by somebody. I need to have a serial number and it has to be approved, not just like in one jurisdiction, but I'm in Canada. So it has to be approved in Canada to do that. So the idea of having a completely open platform for medical device is nice in theory. But in practice, it doesn't work because I still need to get the device physically. Like I cannot build it myself. And I don't want to go through all the regulatory approval if I have just like a Boston IPG that I can just buy off the shelf and that would have all the features that I need. So I love open science and I'm all for it. But for medical devices, somebody still needs to build the thing to make sure it's sterile, to make sure it can be tracked, to make sure that if something happens in the factory, we can find who are the patients who have been implanted with it. You still need a 1-800 hotline to help you if there's a problem or a breakage or whatever. This is the role of industry. This is what industry is good at, providing that kind of quality assurance of robust manufacturing. So we don't need to duplicate that in academia. What I think we need is just to have this conversation with industry where by default and by design, there is a mode where research can be enabled simply without needing specific contracts and everything. But I still want to buy the device and I don't want to deal with serial numbers, all that sterilization problems and manufacturing and sourcing and whatever. So it's a challenge. I'm not saying I have the perfect solution.
So you would want to have this off the shelf, go to a Walmart, or I guess a Canadian equivalent is maybe like Tim Hortons, and just go to Tim Hortons and buy some DBS leads or something like this and be able to use it. But I thought if you were a clinician, then you'd be able to get these approvals, get this access. It's still difficult then, or what? Like you're saying that you still have to jump through the hoops?
Getting the devices is easy. What's hard is getting the devices unlocked so you can program them yourself in settings that are not approved by for indications or using parameters that they are not labeled to be used in. And that's the challenge. So I'm not talking about that being accessible by somebody just going to the shopping mall, but my hospital has a shopping mall. I can buy a Medtronic or a Boston or a Abbott DBS to implant in my patients. So the same mechanism I can use to buy them for research, but it's just when I have them for research, I would like to be able to do more, to get the power a bit differently, or to control them using different parameters, or to just control them using my computer instead of controlling them using the clinician programmer. But that requires the device to be able to speak a common language that our computers can understand and connect to, which is something that's technically that they are already doing when these companies do their testing, when they do their certification process. They all have that technology already. It's just it's not accessible for researchers.
This sounds like the right to repair argument. John Deere, who makes farming equipment, and farmers who are notoriously good at repairing their own equipment. John Deere, they blocked it off and they said, no, only our own people can repair things. Same thing with Apple computers and everything like this. There might be some components that break, but they're not releasing the schematics so that repair shops can fix it. They force you to send it to an Apple repair person, official or Apple repair person, and then usually they tell you, oh, we can't repair it. You have to buy a new one. This sounds almost like a right to repair, or again, maybe we should have a government or legislation coming in, be like, we should have open access, and neurosurgeons should be able to change parameters and be able to do tests on their own with patient consent and IRB and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, that's funny. I've never heard I'll call it a right to repair argument for neurostimulators.
Yeah, then the counter argument is that if something goes wrong with your farming equipment, so it's one thing. If it goes wrong with your DBS, that's sending signal to yourself, and you're the one who put it and who made it crash or whatever, and now you can't because, I don't know, you can't move or whatever. It's another issue. Like, obviously, medical device needs to be so much more robust and safe than any other kind of equipment, except perhaps aviation and aerospace and stuff like that. It's the same kind of level of redundancy and the security that you need, because the stakes are higher than a farming truck or whatever. So it's like there's a reason why these systems are closed. And there's a reason why we would like to be able to play with them. So where's the middle ground and how do we make that work? I think it's a discussion that could be had and moved forward a bit.
Yeah. No, this is really interesting. I think, yeah, definitely you want to keep things safe, and we also want to keep things progressing and moving and everything like this, and have improvements and not have it look like technology from 20, 30 years ago. Because from my point of view, a lot of times it does seem, wow, doesn't seem cutting edge at all. This looks like something from 20 years ago, and especially the circuitry, right? They're using nodes and fabs and everything like this from even 50 years ago. Yeah, they haven't really been doing too much progress.
Yeah, and it when you want to test something new, if you don't have access to devices, then you need to build a device from scratch. Can you imagine the duplication of the work that's involved in that? You just want to test a new feature, but to do that, you need to build your own electrode, build your own stimulator, build your own, just to test one little thing. It's a challenge working in medical devices. And yeah, they're not cutting it. It's once you get your device to the finish line, it costs so much to develop it. You have to run off your design for as long as you can. And we've seen that a lot with the companies right now. The initial Medtronic DBS has been alone in the market for so long, and nothing was moving, nothing was happening. And then Boston happened, and Medtronic has never been as innovative as since they have like Boston breathing in their neck, and they're like, okay, I have to provide something more, and that's good for everybody. The competition that is now happening in the field, not only of standard neuromodulation companies like Boston, Medtronic, Abbott, but also the newcomers in the field of brain-computer interfaces like Synchron, Neuralink, Cortec, and all these other companies who are really trying new indications. It's making neuroscience a very exciting field to be in right now, because there's action going on and the various companies are pushing the other ones to come up and innovate. And that's good for everybody, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting to have somebody, a user of these technologies, talk about this and experience it firsthand. But yeah, this has been great. I didn't expect this conversation to take this turn. Is there anything that you wanted to mention in terms of neuromodulation or neural implants that we didn't cover, or is it, what do you think?
No, I think we've talked about a lot. I think maybe one of the things that's very important for your listeners who might be working in this field or are interested in that is to always keep in mind that when we have these discussions between ourselves about what these technologies can do, it's important to remember that these are still theoretical discussions. And there's one of the biggest problems that you realize when you speak with patients or with people with lived experience who watch these things with paralysis or with restoration for vision or for sensation or whatever is they often have absolutely unrealistic expectations of what we can do. And this is a problem that's called neural hype. And it's a big issue because you build these trials to try and move the field forward, but it's important that the people you enroll don't think that they're going to see again, they're going to walk again, they're going to be like better in maths or better in whatever. It's important for everybody who understands this field to be able to put the story straight and not exaggerate what we can currently do. We are all super excited about this, the potential of this and what this could mean. But today, when we do implants as part of studies and patients are telling me, oh, I'm so happy you're going to make me walk again, not going to happen. This is not where we're at, and this is not what we're chasing with this particular project. So this is very important because you're starting to see a lot of products that you can buy off the shelf, like on Amazon or whatever. Take this helmet, neuromodulation. It will solve your depression, your erectile dysfunction, your math problem, and your unemployment. Like, that's not how it works. And there's a lot of people making a lot of money on these false claims. So we are, as much as we are excited about this field, I think we have together a responsibility to make sure that we don't give false hope and pretend things that are completely crazy to the people. Otherwise, it's just going to devaluate all the work that we're doing. Setting realistic expectations, making sure we don't contribute to the neural hype, and at the same time, moving the field forward in realistic steps and realistic directions. I think that's what we should all be aiming to do.
Wow. Yeah. Do you see this a lot? What percentage of people come in, maybe the doctor told them something, or maybe they saw some video or something like this, or maybe watched a movie and got an idea from that. Nobody actually ever directly said anything. How much, what percent would you say have an inflated view of what's going to happen with the procedure?
Most people have expectations that are very high because they go on the web and they look at even for treatments that are proven, even for treatment like tremor, people will go and they will see a video, and the person who put the video together obviously put a good result. You want to show that the treatment works, so you take your best patient and you show the results. And that's perfect. I'm guilty of that as well. But the reality is that the best patient is not the average patient, and you're going to have bad patients. And so when people come in and tell you, oh, wow, I have people who have stopped completely their tremor. But on average, if you put all of them together, it's a 70, 80% reduction in tremor. It's amazing. They can eat, they can drink, but when you do that on the video, they still have a little bit of something. But you don't see that in the video. You never see that in the video. So it's super important to just set the expectations straight in movement, especially in pain, where the expectations are most of the time unrealistic, that you're going to get better. Like, this works, this is a good technology, it's a good treatment, but it's never going to be perfect. And this is for real indications. So imagine when you're thinking about research projects or experimental procedures, it's really important to scale down the expectations so that people are not disappointed after. You don't want to kill the enthusiasm, but people are happy to be told the truth, and when they come back to the office and they are 80-90% better and they're like this, they're happy instead of being disappointed that I still have something and I thought I would have no tremor left. No, you're much better, and it makes every conversation after simpler when you address that up front.
Yeah. Wow. Excellent. Thank you so much. This has been an excellent conversation. I don't think we've had something like this in the whole podcast history. I really enjoyed it. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, thanks for hosting this. It's a very important work, and keep up the good work.
Hope you enjoyed the show and were able to learn something new, bringing together different fields in novel ways. Until next time on the Neural Implant Podcast.